Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter of one of my stories, correct it as I go. If you want to listen to them or watch them live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. This morning, today, we are doing Chapter 5 of Fractured Families. Numbers floated around the lock. Will didn't look at them. Trying to force them into place would only jumble them more. He ran a finger over the pad. Since the numbers were there, he knew that was enough. But the glove was why they were taking their time. If you could actually touch the keys, feel them, the numbers would fall in place that much faster. I guess this time I win. I guess this time I'll win, a voice said over the comm in his suit. Azir, back in the ship, trying to unlock the airlock from within the computer system. As if a word had been a challenge, the numbers dropped away, leaving 7 floating above the keypad. He entered them, and the light turned green. Oh, come on! Are you kidding me? The door stood open, and he motioned for the others to enter. I have one of the most powerful computer helping me. How is it you got the combination faster than I could? This is so unfair. He smiled, but didn't bother answering. This was their usual friendly competition. Anytime Will needed to get a lock open, could Azir coerce it faster than he did. The only time she had a chance of winning was if he had to take the casing off. The time it took to remove it gave her an edge, and wires and chips weren't as loud as keys. He entered and held the door. Ended? Yes, Azir replied. Me and Goli have their sensors in our thrall, and we threw this airlock out of the loop. Out of the loop, yeah. No one will notice it cycling. He closed the door, and a yellow light flashed. As air filled it, a low tone became audible, turning into a ding as the yellow. And turning into a ding. Yeah. Into a ding as the yellow light became a solid green. Will got out of the suit, and the other 5 with him did the same. Finally, Perry said as he threw it down. I hate those things. Why couldn't this have been a heavy arm ship so I could have stayed on the bridge? Maybe because the captain didn't want to hear you whining? And I replied, so he settled us with you. Jennifer opened the case and handed out a gun to the man. There. Not as big as the ones you handle from the bridge, but it isn't like anyone here cares about you having to overcompensate. You would if you were willing to come to my cabin. You made that offer again, Azir said, and I'm getting golly to suffocate you overnight. Jennifer handed Will and Aliana their weapons. He clipped it to his belt and then helped Aliana with hers. She had wonderfully large hands, but they made handling smaller items, like the gun, more difficult. When he was done, he looked up at her vibrant gray eyes. He pulled her down and still had to go on tiptoe to give her a quick kiss. She blushed and put a fist to her heart, then her forehead. Heart and soul. Her people's version of I love you. Please get a room, you two. Perry complained. Why is it no one kisses me like that? Because you keep going after taking girls, Eliana said in her deep alto. We're good to go, Jennifer said as she closed the case. Will nodded. Guards? All in their hold, mixing it up with the rest of the crew. Perry, Jen, front. Anna, Pat, rear. No dead. Orders. I'll be fine, Aliana said, and her voice melted his heart. We're not like Ender's death squad. We follow the captain's order. The captain's orders. She didn't like Enders, hadn't cared for him from the moment she joined the crew, and had stopped him from trying to pound Will into yet another perceived slight. The man was getting more impossible to deal with every day. Will followed Perry as he guided them through the halls in silence. They only had to neutralize 3 of the crew, all of whom should have been in their quarters as instructed by the ship when the attack began. The unconscious and secured bodies were put in the closest maintenance cubicle. Perry tapped the door. This one. Lucky you, Azir said in its ear. I can't erase you. Will nodded. It was why he'd been sent in instead of another group. This lock was fully disconnected from the ship. He crouched before it and ran a finger over the keypad. It was new. He could tell that by the way there was no discoloration anywhere on it. It also carried the smell of extruded polymer. The numbers floated around it, like they did around every lock he'd ever seen. He didn't question how he did it, how he did what he did. For as long as he remembered, numbers had floated around locks. Duck had her theories. She'd taken scan of his head, of his hands, even of him naked, because she thought his clothing got in the way of the results. That had been before Eliana. Her scans didn't show anything, so she decided it was a subconscious thing. He could see discoloration on the keys where the oils remained, feel the indentation of multiple key press. Pat had asked how about the order of the numbers. How could he know how could he know that if that was all there was to it? That's dumb, Doc. So she'd done more scans. Will? Pat asked softly. Working, he replied. At least she wasn't like Anders, whose tone would say he had to go faster. Then Anders would ask again, as if Will could just tell the numbers to fall into place. No, she was simply reminding him they were working, because she knew him well enough to know he could get lost in the numbers. Locks were beautiful. Not Aliana beautiful, but beautiful in that they always made sense. Even when the numbers didn't want to cooperate, like this. Even when he couldn't tell what the order was, he could feel it. He took his tools and removed the cover. Duck went even more nuts when he did this. Turning the cover over, so he no longer saw the keypad, didn't make the numbers go away. They floated among the wires, stuck to the chips and circuits. They told him what needed to go where. He felt along a wire until he reached the end, cut it, followed a number as it slipped under a circuit, screwed it, and connected the wire there where the number rested. Another number stuck to other wires or chips. He rearranged them. He removed the chip, turned it, put it back, and put it back. When he looked, all the numbers were in place. He closed the cover, and the numbers stayed inside. He tapped the lock open, and the door slid. Duck should have come, Anna said, awe in her voice. Gray-green crates, Aliana said, and she motioned everyone inside. Name on it is Carbotena. How many? Anna asked. All of them, she replied. Captain didn't give a number. She smiled at Will. You think Anders is going to try and take the credit for this too? Will shrugged. He didn't care who got the credit, just that the job was properly done. But Aliana, she did care when someone tried to take credit for something they hadn't done. Still, playing decoy wasn't something Anders cared for. Got 4 crates, Anna said. 3 here, Perry added when he came back. This could be a problem. 5 back here, Patricia said. Definitely a problem. How are we supposed to bring them back? Each crate was 2 feet on each side. The content wasn't fragile, according to what the captain had told them. Whoever had to hold 3 would be in trouble. Eliana searched through the shelves. Any of you find a mine? Ever any of you worked a mine? Is that like the floor cleaner your boyfriend is in love with? Perry asked. Ow! You look at Pat, rubbing his shoulder. No bad-mouthing the group leader. And the guy who managed to convince the captain to keep the sheep clean. Crimson, Will corrected. He'd been the cause. Okay, but you keep going even after he was promoted. But you kept it going even after he was promoted. Alina returned with ropes. Well, back where I grew up, they don't use machine to mine for coralites. It has to be done by hand. She crouched by a cube and tied the ropes around it, forming a harness. You end up with those crystal, a little smaller than these. Problem is, they're fragile. You drop one and it shatters. The bosses get pissed if that happens. If you even want to know what pain is like, go under a whip that's been coated in shards. You learn ropes and knots real quick. She had 3 cubes secured together, then put that on Anna's back, tying the rope over her shoulder and chest. Perry settled up to Will. Does she? He motioned to what Aliana was doing. Does she do that to you? If you want, Aliana said as she started working on another set. I can show you what I do when we're back on the ship. Sure, Perry replied eagerly. Don't be an idiot, Jen said. She's going to get you naked, tie you up, and leave you somewhere public. Perry thought about it. Would it be somewhere women could admire me? Enough, Will said. Help. He motioned to the other crate and he joined Eliana. In no time, four of them had three crates secured to their back, leaving Jen and Will without any. Will shook his head and motioned for Eliana's burden, me. She smiled and took the gun out of her holster, putting it in his hand. You get to be my hero and make sure I make it back to the ships alive. She leaned in and kissed him. I'm just a sidekick, aren't I? Jen commented. I'll kiss you if you want, Perry replied. Do so, Asir said on calm, and die. Will looked at Liana, placed a fist over his heart, then his forehead, and turned to the door. Go. And that concludes Chapter 5 of Fractured Families. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next one's going to be, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read the story, as well as the others in the series, they are available on all major e-retailer. If you want to support a different way of supporting me, you can do that on my Patreon. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. The links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.